last but most certainly not least is just a man who is, I think, just character and example and like humility and just respect for other people and just desire to be a good member of the community, and also a very, very educated person who's dedicated to things bigger than himself, an engineer, a man who's the protocol officer for the Marine base here in San Diego. So the kind of person that, you know, is going to be the face that a congressman or a senator or somebody is going to see when they're like, you know, you're coming to San Diego, you're coming to the Marines. And he's now a CSP alumni, an engineer, somebody who I expect will, it's possible this capstone project itself might become California state policy. And I don't say that flippantly. And I expect that Frank is going to be a very important figure in the decarbonization of California, especially in terms of certain specific sectors. And today he'll have an opportunity to talk about making sense of energy efficiency, spelled C-A-N-T-S. Do home upgrades pay off? Question mark. Frank Fleck.
All right, give me 1 second here. All right, good evening, everyone. Made it to the end of the day. Thank you. You've given all of us a round of applause. How about a round of applause for yourself? You made it through 25, almost 26. There you go. Thank you. And shout out to my girls watching at home. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow for graduation. Okay, so let's start out. So my project, let's make some sense out of energy upgrades. So as Corey mentioned, my background's in electrical engineering. I went to San Diego State, class of 2010. I then served in the United States military, Marine Corps, here for another 7 years, and then I decided to enter this program. And probably most relevant to this project was in 2018, me and my wife bought this pretty little yellow house back here. And after 20 years living in San Diego, we finally were able to make the modifications to our home. You know, when you're a renter, you can't paint the walls, you can't hang anything, you cannot make any upgrades. So when we excitedly purchased our first home, we looked at all the upgrades we can do and realized there's a million options and everything is super expensive. So you do not have money to do everything you want. So we realized that you kind of have to pick what upgrades you want. So in 2023, the last year of data, Americans spent $827 billion on home improvements. And only 28% of them went to energy efficient upgrades. So either homeowners are not educated or you don't even save money on energy efficiency. So that's what I wanted to look to. So I want to see, is energy efficient worth it? So I decided to look into the agency who determines energy efficiency in California, and that's California Energy Commission. So Title 24, which is the Building Standards Code for California, and Part 6, which is the Energy Code, is released triannually every 3 years by the California Energy Commission. They do this to kind of push energy efficient upgrades on people to help them, use less energy in the future. So they do this through programs, like inspection programs, like the CHEERS, California Home Energy Efficiency Rating System, and through modeling software like Energy Pro. So through the course of this project, I looked into what CHEERS is. So CHEERS, overseen by the California Energy Commission, trains HERS raters. And they're the ones who do the field verification and testing of the Title 24, Part 6 compliance. So over the course of this project, I actually decided to become a HERS rater to become a subject matter expert and talk to that. I also reached out to Energy Pro and got them to let me use a demo, or not the full version of their software, to test Title 24 compliance on homes. So now with all my tools, I then looked at what the home is. So in 2023, last year data, 75% of home sales were detached single-family homes. These on average were 1,900 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And of these home sales, 15% were new and 85 were existing, meaning 15% of them had the newest energy efficient upgrades and 85% of them they did whatever they want on the house. And you'll see right here. So after I constructed like a generic house in Energy Pro, I realized that after I dug through the building codes, I could change certain characteristics on the home to model a home from 1970, which represented pre-building codes or pre-energy codes, so they could build the house however they want. 1990, when energy codes really started to focus on standardization and beginning of efficiency, and then a 2010 home, which really was, way more efficient than the other homes. So I used Energy Pro, my modeling software, I built these homes, and then I put them all in Climate Zone 10. That's where I live in Escondido, and Climate Zone 10 represents about 10% of California's population. As you see in the far top right, 6, 7, 8, and 9, they're very similar to Climate Zones 10, so I would say they could be closely included in the performance, and that represents about 25% of all homes in California. So now with my home constructed, placed, all my different homes, I then wanted to look into the life cycle of the different upgrades I have. So the 6 different categories of upgrades I chose were because they are, 1, inspectable by HERS raters that they have to sign off for energy efficiency, and then 2, they were the ability to accurately model them in Energy Pro. So I went through and I did solar, and then as I kind of go through the line, you'll see the average cost provided by the guys at the bottom, and then the average lifetime is just the industry expected lifetime. So I did solar, new windows, replacing roof, water heaters, installing insulation or adding, and replacing an HVAC system. Now, let's look into an example of how or why this matters with roofing. So let's look at this 1970 home. So it's built in 1970. The 1990 home, built then, of course, but the 1970 gets a new roof in 2000. So his roof is actually newer than the 1990 home for a while. So as you see the choices, as I build out this whole slide, the choices that the 1970 home could make in 2030 or the 1990 home could make can affect way into the future when you look at the length of upgrades that are 20 and 30 years. So just remember that for later. We'll get back to that. So let's dig into the results. As probably everybody thought, and we talked about today, solar. Get solar. Solar is definitely worth it in California. When I bought my home, it was the first thing we did because you're going to use energy. As Pete mentioned, the rates have continuously gone up. I have lived here 20 years. I have seen them, probably go up 200, 300, 400% in just those years that we've lived here. I don't expect the rates to come down, so I don't see why adding solar would ever be not worth it. And as you see, this is the total savings available to homeowners. You see over 40% was brought by solar alone right there. And you also see that red 26 there. You can't tell, but that's purple. So installing an electric water heater actually costs homeowners. So that made me realize that I needed to look a little bit more and compare emission savings and cost savings. So here on the top right, you'll see these are the 3 most efficient upgrades as far as cost savings to homeowners based on the era the home was built. But then you look at the bottom right, you'll see that the top 3 for emission savings are not the same. Yes, solar is the same because it provides so much, but the other 2 don't even fall on this chart. So I wanted to look at them side to side, to compare the mismatch. So this is kind of a busy thing, but you'll see on the bottom, so on the x-axis, you see the different upgrades, and then the boxes, you're seeing the savings available, tracking on the left side of the y-axis. And then on the right side, that's tracking the emissions reductions brought forth by each upgrade. So you see solar is almost 400 times the savings available to anything else, making it the #1 targeted upgrade. But then some interesting things I saw was like new windows. So new windows offer great savings to a 1970 and 1990 home, but almost nothing to a 2000 home. So it isn't necessarily the age of when the home was built always. Sometimes it's just the era of upgrade that they're on and whether they've upgraded. So I want to highlight these 2 things to kind of talk out what we saw. So in the case on the left of the gas water heater, the gas water heater actually provides savings to every single one of the homes, while installing an electric water heater actually costs the homeowner money. So that's kind of representing a mismatch of like what what California is trying to do, because homeowners are just going to try to save money. They don't really care for emissions. So there needs to be something else that kind of pushes this forward. And as you see on the right, same thing with the HVAC. So the gas HVAC provides way more savings, upgrading to a high efficiency gas thing, versus a heat pump electric. But as we talked about in the life cycles example, a new furnace, gas furnace installed today could potentially last for 20 to 30 years, meaning it's going to still exist in 2045 or 2055, which clearly is going to be an impediment to California's net zero goals. So by 2045, California, the foremost climate leader, set their goals a little early to achieve their net zero targets by 2045. So to kind of accomplish these goals, California set up the cap and trade system, which puts a cap on emissions, and companies essentially trade or buy permits for emissions. This generates funding, which goes into the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So that is managed by CCI, so California Climate Investments. So California Climate Investments, it's overseen by CARB, and it administers newer programs over a number of agencies to promote public health and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So these slides, these figures at the bottom, they're from the annual report. And you'll see that they've spent over $12.8 billion over the past 11 years, abating carbon at an average cost of $110 per metric ton of CO2 equivalent. I'm just going to say per ton, just to make it easier. And you'll see that's an important metric to them, because they actually have to track it for every single one of the projects they have. So with all the results of my study, I was like, how do my results compare? So I looked at this. So if California provided an additional subsidy, 30% subsidy, to the following energy efficient items, this would be the cost per ton to abate. So you'll see that solar and water heaters are under the $110 metric right off the bat that they've been doing for their goals. So one of the other goals of their program is to ensure that the money goes to priority populations. So I took solar and I did an example where they are providing tiered examples or tiered subsidies to encourage adoption. So in the bottom right, before I talk through this, you'll see that over 40% goes to priority populations, achieving the 35% goal. And in this example, so for priority households, we're providing 100% subsidies, so providing solar, targeting areas that are, as we mentioned, the grid congestion, and areas that it would benefit them the most to reduce, and then also offering the 30% subsidy for middle income. And then this example also includes a 10% subsidy for high income, because I don't understand why we want to punish high income people and have them not, want to improve efficiency if they're willing to do it. It's the cheapest cost to abate on here. So this comes out to an average about 44. I will say that this likely overestimates the value of solar, because solar is provided to calculate the emissions. I used SDG&E's power content label. I would argue that it's not always going to give you the most correct example of the carbon intensity of your fuel, because it's the average over the year, and solar is only providing it probably during the least carbon intensive part of the day, between 10 and 2. Sorry. Okay, next one. And there was my total cost. So last one. So this one was just targeting the two examples that we talked about. So this is just providing subsidies to homes at the pre-2000 and post-2000 level. This one specifically targets the heat pumps, the electric heat pumps, because they don't provide any savings to the homeowner. So they're not willing to adapt unless you can either bring the cost down or bring them some kind of advantage over the gas furnace line. So that's what I have for this one. And these were my costs. So kind of conclusion. So what I saw, as we mentioned during the whole project, like solar is worth it. I don't get why some people don't have solar if you have the opportunity to do it and you're gonna stick here. It pays off, it adds to the value of your home. It is worth it in California. And that's why I think California should even look to help subsidize, provide financing, whatever they can to help low income people be able to do it. Because it does pay itself off, whether it's the time or not. And then the policy relevance. So without beginning this program, I would have just selfishly looked at this from engineering, how to improve my home, what should homeowners do? And it wasn't until I went through this program that I realized that the findings that we have actually have relevant examples. Like, this is a goal that California is trying to do, and if I'm providing research for a certain sector, they should happily be able to use this research for that. And then finally, for future research, due to like the combinatorial factor of combining upgrades, it just was very challenging for me to model. But adding solar panels and then electric appliances would also decrease their payback period, greatly. So, appreciate you guys listening. I'd like to thank my committee. I had a great time. This was a fun project.
Hell of a performance. What a closer. Do you envision a career in energy in the future, moving beyond this program? I mean, you have the engineering mindset, the discipline of the Marine Corps. Well, what's next?
Yeah, so I really love energy efficiency and just, wanting to save people money. I think, a lot of times in these programs, we just tell people that we should do it because we should do it to either reduce emissions or that. But telling people that, hey, it's cost effective to do that and educating them, is really a goal of mine. So I appreciate that.
I really liked your presentation, and don't take exception to solar being on the top, but from my personal experience, changing the windows was huge. It just made all the difference because you're more comfortable for longer. You're not turning on the AC or, things like that. So I like that was highlighted as a feature that would, for an older home, obviously.
Oh, definitely. I completely agree. And even in my paper, I more said, if a home still has single pane windows, they should probably target that as their first upgrade. But given the life of single pane windows and when they stopped installing them in homes, that I don't expect too many more to be lingering around for a long time.
My personal experience is my husband and I went by the PAYGO system, so we did one side of the house and it took a long time to get all the way around. And because we had one side of the house had a lot of windows, we put that off to the end. But we should have done it first for all the reasons you pointed out. So.
Yeah, no, and one of the interesting things I found during this project is actually installing new windows sometimes increases your greenhouse gas emissions because you reduce the amount of solar coming in, so you have to heat your house more with gas. So if you have a gas furnace, it actually increases your emissions to install new windows. It's very interesting. Sir?
I wonder if you took into your modeling the future price of solar. One main reason why solar is so cheap is because the Chinese have been making cheap panels. They're good, but they're inexpensive. If all this tariff stuff goes through, or just the natural increase that the main producer uses, that I would imagine that would change the results of this analysis. And I don't know how you dealt with that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I was actually waiting to see if there was any action on the One Big Beautiful Bill to see if I should change my findings to where California should subsidize some of the federal subsidies that are going away to kind of encourage these adoptions. Because if the goal is to abate carbon at whatever price, we should do whatever's the most effective.